Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. We're going to give it a couple more seconds here as people join us. Great. It is 2:01, and we know that your time is very valuable, so we are going to jump right in. My name is Alex Wirth, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Quorum, and really excited to spend some time talking with you all today about leveling up for the new year, 4 things every public affairs team should be doing. Today, we are going to go through really 4 different subjects. First off, talking about the most basic of identifying legislative champions with the 116th Congress on its way. The second is to set up stakeholder mapping and making sure that you have a comprehensive system to be able to do that. The third, we'll talk about policy reputation calendars, one of my favorite subjects. And then finally, we'll conclude with some conversation around grassroots organizing and building up your grassroots advocacy program. Of course, like always, we're going to have time for questions, so feel free to put any of your questions. If you just drag your little cursor down to the bottom left-hand side of your screen, you'll see a little chat box that says Q&A. You put your question there, we'll make sure to answer them at the end of the conversation today, but can go over any topic. And really the goal of our time together is to give you some best practices and ideas that you can take back to your team and organization so that you're ready to go in 2021 with the most cutting edge strategies. One of the best parts about my role is I get to see across our 450 plus client organizations about what they're doing, and also get to meet with many potential clients and really see the best of advocacy. And over the course of the last 5.5 years doing that, we've developed the series of best practices, some of which are shared here today, about really what does the best of stakeholder engagement and advocacy look like. And I am so incredibly excited to share them with you all today. So, jumping right into topic number 1, which is identifying new legislative champions and threats. So we have a large number of new members of Congress coming, somewhere between, I think, 50 and 60 by the time all the vote counting is done. And this means that they're going to be looking at a whole new series of legislative agenda, and you're going to be having new issues come down the road that your team's going to be needing to think about being prepared to address. And there's a couple of basic organizational strategies that can help you set up to be the most successful you possibly can be as it comes to preparing for 2021. So we've got 3 different levels: a beginner, an intermediate, and advanced. And we have these for all 4 of our topics today, which can help you be able to organize your thought process and also realize, all right, what is the basics that you should be doing? And then what are some things that you can take and level up and be building to? Or if you already think that you run a pretty sophisticated government affairs operation, where's the chance to really highlight some of those amazing areas that you're working on and take that program to the next level? So most basic level, this is one of our favorite tricks, is you should be going through and looking for legislator bios at both the federal and the state level and figuring out the backgrounds of both all of the current member of Congress, but also the new members of Congress going in. And what you're going to find is there's going to be often little hooks that are going to surprise you. So the example we have for you today, Cynthia Loomis, Republican from Wyoming, she received a bachelor's degree in animal science and biology. So if you're working on a key issue that maybe relates to endangered species, animal rights, or have some sort of ecological system issue in front of her, here's an opportunity to find a champion where she gets it. And you could do a little bit of digging, figure out exactly where she went to school, what did she study, did she win any academic prizes or awards? But suddenly there's an opportunity to draw her in, where if you go up and have a chance to have a Zoom conversation with her, it's, well, tell me about your degree. What did you study? Oh, that's so interesting. We have this very similar issue. And then suddenly there's an opportunity for a champion. As you think about people who might actually be in the profession that you represent, it's another wonderful opportunity. Members of Congress, state legislators, given that there's 7,300 state legislators and 535 members of Congress, come from a wide variety of different backgrounds. And you're likely going to be able to find champions from people who've had similar experiences or similar passions or interests, and they want to communicate that. So obviously, these are all available on individual members of Congress's website. Would encourage you to go through them. We also at Quorum have built a way to search through them. So if you're a Quorum client, there's a really handy search bar that you can go into, and your customer success team member can help you be able to find that and suddenly find a whole list of champions that come from that. Second one is another really obvious piece of this. on the intermediate level, which is obviously committees and caucuses. As you all know very well, your legislators that sit on those key committees are going to be the ones that you want to be spending time with. A pro tip here is to be especially thoughtful about new legislators that are coming onto a committee, haven't had the chance to spend a lot of time on the issues before, or have a new committee assignment that they're really excited about. Here's an opportunity for you to offer to be helpful. Go in, brief them. You probably know the work of the committee maybe better than they do. True at the federal level, true at the state legislative level, and be a resource to them to help get them up to speed, and also be open and honest and share the key issues that you and your organization have. But then the one that I find really interesting is to dive in and be able to go and look at caucuses. And the reason for that is that there happens to be a caucus for everything. And our great example here is Representative-elect Pete Sessions, was on the House Committee on Rules, but also has been a member of the Congressional Cement Caucus. Who would have ever thought the Congressional Cement Caucus? And you can often find a great understanding of, okay, where are there key constituencies in a member's district that might be relevant? Or where are there members who've said, yes, I'm particularly passionate about an issue? Or on the total other side of that, what might your opponents be doing? Where are their relationships? And caucuses serve as a wonderful signaling tool for a member to say, yes, I really care about an issue like cement. I'm going to join I've been a member of the Congressional Cement Caucus. Or on the other side, it's an opportunity for you to then get that member to sign up for the caucus. And maybe you go ahead and decide as part of your 2021 legislative strategy to create a caucus and get more members to sign up and be a part of it. Really easy ask, and also a really great signaling tool. A number of different providers, including Quorum, have databases of all the congressional caucuses, so it makes it fairly easy to go through. It is pretty painstaking information to collect, just because every caucus keeps their own membership list. And surprisingly enough, there's not one central source that has all of the caucuses, but a really valuable one to think about and be able to access should you subscribe to Quorum or another one of the legislative platforms. Moving on to the intermediate level, this is a key one, is social media posts. And realizing that many of these members of Congress, new senators, new state legislators, have run campaigns. And they've run campaigns in the middle of the pandemic, where one of the best ways to communicate with voters is by putting information out on social media. Because what were all Americans doing in the second quarter of this year as we were stuck at home in quarantine, and many who are still quarantined now, they're online, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, looking for content. And members of Congress and state legislators have rushed to put out information to fill that void. When they're putting out information, they're establishing policy positions. They're talking about what they care about. They're talking about issues, their thoughts on what might come in 2021. And this is an awesome time to both find new champions for your issue, but also to identify some of the detractors. How are they messaging it? What are they saying? What are they linking to in the reports that they're sharing? And a really, really essential one. The other example to be thoughtful about is that this year we've seen close to a record number of new members of Congress who have had previous political experience, either as a mayor, a school board member, a state legislator, or even you take somebody like Senator-elect Ben Ray Lujan, has been a member of Congress for going on, I think, 10 plus years. He's put out hundreds of thousands of statements on social media talking about all series of issues. And so if you're looking for an opportunity to engage, you can start to see what are his top issues and where might he have said something. He's talked about COVID-19 191 times, Act on Climate 75, get covered 58 times. Really diving in, you'd be surprised, very much like the bios, on some of the gems that you would find and some of the opportunities that you might not even know existed. If you're a company and you're joining this webinar with us, would really encourage you to make sure that you search your company name. The reason for that is that oftentimes these members are going to visit your individual company. And so some of the best conversations that I've had is being able to say, hey, look, you actually have a consumer who's a big fan of whatever it may be, whether it's a Diet Coke or goes fishing and goes to Walmart to go buy their individual items. And then they share that with their constituents because they're individual humans and they want to be more relatable. There's that opportunity for you to come in and say, oh, hi, new member of Congress so-and-so. I know you're a huge fan of X topic. And that's just an immediate point where they go, wow, you did your research. You really know who I am. And oh, by the way, what does everyone love? They love talking about items that they're passionate about, even if those are personal. And if those are the items that your trade association or your issue that a nonprofit represents or your company, it's a wonderful way in. And you can start to identify, all right, who are those stakeholders that are going to be most helpful and most receptive. And then finally, on this topic of identifying news champions, is looking at news monitoring and using that to be able to identify both new champions as well as threats. And as you all know from spending lots of time in Washington or in the state capitals, what do all these members of Congress and state legislators read? They go and read the local newspaper because they want to know what's happening in their community and they want to know what's going on. I'll never forget when I was an intern in New Mexico for Senator Bingaman. One of my jobs was to do the press clips and pull together the Santa Fe New Mexican, the Albuquerque Journal, and make sure that the senator got the information that happened at the given time about what was going on in the community. And so here's an opportunity for you to take a step back, remove yourself from the national media, from the New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico, and go and figure out what are those individual journalism outlets that a member of Congress is reading day in and day out, and what's going on in those individual articles. An incredible example of this is the American Hotel and Lodging Association. So we did a webinar with them right after the pandemic happened, and they talked about how they made an active effort to go through all the small newspapers across all 50 states and pull the stories about the hotel owners that were impacted by the pandemic. And what they were able to do with that is then go take those article clips and send them to the member of Congress to say, hey, this is a really big issue in your district. You need to be paying attention to it. Here's the story of someone who was impacted by it. And essentially what it is, it's story banking. You just don't have to do the work of finding the story or putting together the entire written narrative. The local newspapers are doing it for you and even give you greater credibility because there then is that basically credibility that comes with, hey, here was in the newspaper and you had thousands of people read it. Here's a chance to go do something about it. So applies and does a really great job to be able to figure out, all right, where are they talking and have you legislators that are talking about your issue? And then also on the other side of it, are there areas that you can say, hey, legislator, you've got a really big issue in your district, you should be engaging. So this is the big reason that we've added news monitoring to the Quorum platform in the last year to be able to do these searches by district. And we've gone ahead and basically segmented out so you can only search newspapers in a given member of Congress's district, put in the individual topic you're looking for, and then get the results. But also, as you know, you can go online to Google and go pop in the individual newspaper and just go one by one to be able to find this, or even Google News search can help you as well. So that is the first big subject here, which is all about stakeholder mapping. You got to come in, or all about champion identification, I should say. You got to come in and identify who are you going to be your champions, who are you going to be detractors, and just get a sense of who these individuals are that are going to be representing in a Congress, in a state legislature, even working in the administration, and what can you learn about them that's going to better equip you for when you begin engaging with them in 2021. As you likely know, many of the new legislators are working on hiring staff and are immersed in that at the moment. And so why now might not be the best time to reach out to them. You can take the time now to prepare for 2021 so that you can really level up your advocacy strategy and be ready to go for the start of the year. So that is identifying champions. If you've got any questions, drag the cursor down, bottom left, click the Q&A button, and go ahead and put in your question. Would love to dive in and talk further on that. Oh, and I forgot one here on it, but it's stakeholder survey. So on identifying champions, this is another actually fantastic, really best practice is a level 3, and that is going out and surveying all of your members, all of your individual donors, all the people that are advocates for you, all of your employees, and just asking, hey, do you know any of these new members of Congress, or do you know any of the current members of Congress? People have obviously paid a lot of attention to the election results. They know an election just happened because of the presidential election. And so here's a chance to go in and ask them and say, hey, what's your relationship with them? And one of the things that you're going to find is you have an immense network of connections that exist within your own organization that you don't even know, where somebody might go to church with a given member. Somebody's kids play on the same little league team. Somebody went to high school with a given individual. There's all these connections and relationships that exist. And it's really up to you to go out and survey your own individual members to identify those. And that's another great way that even if a member hasn't talked about your interests or your issues, is there's a personal relationship and they go, oh yeah, of course, I'd be happy to do that for Kurt. I've known Kurt for so many years. Or here's a friendly face that then you get an introduction and Kurt introduces Alex, and then suddenly, oh wow, this is a really great relationship that we have, and it gives you some credibility to start. So stakeholder surveys there. Moving on to topic number 2, which is setting up stakeholder mapping. So this is a really key one, as it's going to help keep you organized over the course of 2021. And also, it's going to be a wonderful place that you can take all the work that you've done on champion identification and pull that together and be able to actually put it into a format that's useful that you can share with your team and get your team organized and aligned on. There are a ton of different ways to do stakeholder mapping. And we're going to walk through a beginner approach, an intermediate approach, and then a more advanced approach to be thinking about as you're pulling in your own individual stakeholder maps. So The first big one that I would highly encourage is just a very basic of mapping your stakeholders out by issue. Get a sense, who are the people that you're going to be working with or going after or trying to lobby on all your individual issues. So maybe you're working on Section 230. Who are the legislators and lawmakers that you know care about that are going to be really influential and you want to engage? Maybe separately, you're working on intellectual property. Same item. Who are the legislators that you're going to be working with? Do the committees differ? Is there any sort of difference there? Maybe it's a tax issue and starting to just begin to plan out and know, all right, if we're going to be able to have a chance to get our legislative priority passed, or on the other side of that, if we're going to go stop a legislative priority, who do we need to be talking to? Because these are individuals that are actively care about our individual issue and are going to be really interested in the work that we're doing, and are going to want to hear more from our team, and also are going to be receptive if we bring in a given message. So again, you flash back to the biographies, to the caucuses, to the committees, to the social media. Those are all fantastic areas to start to get a sense of what do these individual members of Congress, what state legislators or city officials care about, and start to put together, all right, who are the key stakeholders on a given issue. Second big one is team assignments. So this is just a must do. And I would highly encourage that you sit down with your team going in 2021 and saying, okay, who is taking point on the relationship with every single one of these legislators? And simply assigning a key point of contact is a wonderful best practice that'll help you to really focus on building a strong relationship. Also, it divvies up the work. No one necessarily wants to go do research on all 535 members of Congress if you have a team of 3. And worst, you don't want 3 people doing research each on all 535. Divvy it up. Say you're going to take these people, you're going to take the others, and then the third person will take the rest. One of my favorite ways that I've seen a client of ours do this is through a congressional draft, where they go around all 535 members and you draw straws to start, and the person who gets to start picks their member that they want to start with. And they say, well, I worked in New Mexico. I know Senator Lujan really well. I want to take him first. And then you go around, so you get the best relationships that each person has, and you keep going round and round until all 535 members are assigned. That's obviously one way to do it. Very creative that I love. We'll see many teams that will assign by House and Senate, by Democrat, Republican, by committee, by issue. But essentially, you should make sure that you have a very clear way of assigning members, and you've taken to note down in either an online spreadsheet in a platform or an Excel document. Here's exactly the individual members of Congress, and here is exactly who is responsible for working with them and is the main point on the relationship. Doesn't mean that other people can't see them. You're going to run into them across town. They're going to be involved in other items. You're going to go in and do 2 meetings together, but it's just simply who is focused on going to go and build the relationships that happen. So those are basically levels 1 on going through and doing stakeholder mapping. Level 2 is mapping stakeholders by tier. So this is another, honestly, really key one, which is, all right, you know who matters on the issues, you know who your team's going after, but it's bringing some sort of prioritization to your stakeholder mapping system. And I would be surprised and slightly remiss because we don't have a large number of people that I've seen that do this really consistently. People aspire to do this, but it's just one of those key best practices to make time and effort to do. And that's simply saying, okay, out of your list of 7,300 state legislators, who are your tier 1s? Who are your tier 2s and who are your tier 3s? Great opportunity to sit down with your team in advance and define what does a tier 1 mean versus a tier 2 versus a tier 3. But really focus yourself to narrow down and say, these are our most important individuals who are tier 1s. These are our tier 2s, really influential on our issues. And then these are tier 3s who we're not going to have a relationship with, might not be as influential on our issue, but obviously, if we've got a chance to engage with them, we'll take it up. And the reason why I encourage this is that it prioritizes your efforts. You are likely very busy, as most folks are. There's only so much time in the day. You want to be really thoughtful in your approach of going after just the individual members of Congress that are going to have the biggest impact, and being able as well to focus your team. If you can go and take a team of 5 people and say, all right, each of you only has 5 tier 1s, make sure they know you on a first name basis. Boom, off to the races. Versus saying, hey, each of you has got 50 legislators. It's going to be a little harder to know every one of those 50 legislators to know that individual on a first name basis. And so really forces that prioritization, which is a key best practice. The other side of it is also lets you check in later in the year to say, okay, on our tier 1s, how many meetings have we done with tier 1s? Have we touched every one of them? Do we have a strong relationship with them? And so you can start to use this to segment later on in some of the items that we'll talk about here in a minute. And then number 3 here is mapping stakeholders by interest and influence. So this is one of the more advanced and it's one of my favorites, where you get an individual X and a Y axis. And here on the Y is their influence score, and here on the X is their interest score. And the goal of this is to be able to essentially create a little quadrant where you have 4 different boxes that you have based on an individual member's influence and an individual member's interest. And you can honestly do this with any stakeholder. It's a great stakeholder mapping best practice. And you simply do it by going to a spreadsheet and saying, okay, this stakeholder is really influential. Might be Dick Durbin. Maybe he's going to be chair of Senate Judiciary. That's a key issue as it comes to IP legislation. And so Dick Durbin's going to be there and he's going to have a very high influence. Maybe he's not that interested in it, let's say. Then you might put him and say, oh, well, maybe he's a 5 or 3 or 4, and it be able to highlight. But maybe you take somebody totally different and say, okay, it's Elizabeth Warren and we're at banking reform. Not only is she very influential, like ran for president, big Twitter following, but also she has tremendous interest. And so she's going to be someone who's in this upper quadrant up here on the top right. And the goal of this is to really then break down exactly who are your stakeholders who you need to communicate to. Those are the people that are really influential, but not super interested, or people who are really interested, but not super influential. So those are in the top left or the bottom right. Who are the people that you just need to monitor? And the idea here is people that are not very influential and not very interested. You just need to keep an eye on to make sure that something weird doesn't pop up, or they don't have a constituent and then gets really mad. And so suddenly they become super interested in it. So you want to be thoughtfully paying attention. And then the top right, you get the people that are really influential and the people that are really interested. And those are the folks that you want to be able to go talk with them and say, hey, we want to meet with you. We want to engage with you. We want to help you to shape this information in this legislation. And so that can help take and narrow down your stakeholder work and stakeholder score even better as you go through it. I've got one bonus one here for you all as well, and that is of going through and doing a relationship score as it comes to stakeholder mapping. And essentially, the best practice that I recommend is using something that's qualitative, and this comes from the business world, so it's very easy to apply. And that is taking every member of Congress that you have and having your team go through and say, do you have a relationship with them? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, that's the first level. Then is knows our team. If you walked into an individual event or joined a Zoom fundraiser, would they go, oh, Alex, great to see you? Or they would at least recognize and say, oh, you're familiar, you show up. Do they know your team? Third, do they know your issues? So this is a big one. Like, oh, do they go, hey, Alex, how are things going with truck weights? Because they know that you've briefed them and you really care about that particular issue. Fourth is, are they supportive of your issues? And then fifth is, are they willing to take action on your behalf? And this becomes a wonderful opportunity at the beginning of the year to actually sit and capture where is your team? And where are the relationships that they have with all of these members of Congress? And you can then start to be able to compare that back with some of the items that we've talked about. So take interest and influence. Are you most interested in most influential people? Are they supportive of your issues? Do they even know your team, or do you not have a relationship with them? Awesome way to be able to dive in. Or people on a specific tier. Do all your tier 1 folks, do they at least all know your team, or are they supportive of your issues? Immediate opportunity to be able to dive into that. And it gives you a chance to then just take a benchmark and say, all right, we are prepared, or here's where we have work and have areas for improvement that we need to do. And then from there, to be able to build on to that and say, okay, over the year, what is our goal to change that? How many of our tier 1s do we want to move from just knows about our issues to supportive of our issues? And so you can benchmark yourself every quarter, every 6 months, every year. And then you have an opportunity to be able to come in and very clearly say, at the end of the year, we had 30 legislators who didn't even know our team. Now, at the end of the year, we have 15 of those legislators are champions of our issues, and another 5 are willing to take action on our behalf, and at least 10 we've briefed on our team. And so there then is that opportunity to really show the progression year over year, and it becomes a great opportunity to prove return on investment with a very simple stakeholder mapping tool. So that's item number 2 to share with you all today, focused on stakeholder mapping. Again, drag your cursor to the bottom left. There's a Q&A button, and there's an opportunity to be able to go and submit any questions that you have. We've got 2 more here to go, and then we'll take any and all questions that you have. But the third one is to plan your policy communications calendar. So this is an essential one, and it's great as you go into your 2021 planning of figuring out, all right, what are you going to communicate over every month of the year? And there's really 3 different levels of this, of sophistication to think about. So the first one is just sending a monthly themed email to a master list. The second is segmenting down the list by issue or by role. And then the third, most advanced, is incorporating events and social media into your approach. But basically, the idea of this as it comes to policy communications is you have all these issues. You want to be sharing those issues out and actively communicating to the stakeholders, the members of Congress, their staff, the individual legislators, so that they are up to speed about those issues and at least know about them. And taking time to send out and be able to do that on a consistent basis is one of the best ways that you can do. You probably, like me, read Politico Playbook, and you'll see that organizations will spend tens of thousands of dollars, if not much more than that, to sponsor Playbook for an individual week. Because what do they want to do? They want to share the positive stories and messages that they have getting in front of those individuals on a playbook, because lots of people go and read it. But the key trick here is that you can get that same benefit, but send it just to the individuals that you want to make sure to reach. Because if you have all their emails and their contact information, you can put it in their inbox, and they're going to go and read your note the same way that you hope that you read Political Playbook. And what you find is it ends up being a lot more cost effective to be able to do that. But also then you can be able to follow that up with some consistency. So realizing we see many ads in a day as consumers, you see one ad, you look at it and you go, okay, great. But it's seeing it multiple times or getting multiple emails, and then you have the chance to really internalize, all right, here's my big issue. And so what we would encourage you to do is basically make a plan and send one email a month out highlighting the key things that your organization is doing. So you've got April, Earth Day. Does your organization put out a sustainability report? What are the great things around sustainability that you can highlight from your members? As you think about the 4th of July, is there something there around citizenship that you can highlight and the work around civics education that you're doing? Maybe it's August and back to school. How are your team members, your employees, your member companies? What issues do you have as it relates to back to school? November, it's Veterans Day. Do you make a donation to veterans? Here's an opportunity then to highlight that. Thanksgiving, obviously giving thanks. Or saying, hey, we made a donation on Giving Tuesday. But there's all these wonderful opportunities to be able to go and communicate, here are the good things that your organization is doing or that your company is doing, or here's where you stand on key issues that happen that align with new product launches, with key conferences, with industry events, so that you're front and center. And that means that, one, you have all these staffers and stakeholders who are knowing and saying, oh yeah, I know that organization. I know the issues that they care about. But also on the other side of it, and this is the key trick, is your email signature is there at the bottom. So you have your email address and phone number, where if an issue pops up, it's not, oh, let me call the main line at X organization and hope I talk to the receptionist. But instead it's, oh no, I know Alex from so-and-so. Alex's cell phone is right here. I'm going to go immediately call him and I can be able to ask his opinion on X. And it puts your name front and center. So would highly, highly encourage you, take the time, go through and plan one email each month, put together a list of people you want to send it to, and make an active effort to send it out. People love good news. They want to hear from you. They want to be able to see that, and they want opportunities to engage. And the really cool thing is the technology is now good enough that you can send a personalized email to every individual member of Congress's staff or state legislators that makes it seem that you took the time to send it one by one by one. And that can provide huge benefits that just keep you front of mind and front of center with those individuals and organizations. Second big one is segmenting out your email audiences by issue or by role. So exact same concept as the most basic level, but then breaking down your list and saying, okay, well, who are all the staffers that cover agriculture? And how are you going to message things to agriculture separately? Or staff role. Do you have a different strategy that you're messaging to chiefs of staff? Then maybe you do staff assistants and LCs because they might be more junior and you're going to think about building relationships with them in a separate way. Or maybe the chief of staff probably knows a lot about the issue, but the LC and the staff assistant don't. And so they're looking for education, whereas the chief of staff more wants the update and the really business talking points. And then also segmenting a bit by beginner or advanced. So, okay, who are individuals that have your issue in your portfolio, that know the issue inside and out? And again, who are like the LC or the staff assistants just getting started. The other really advanced one that you can do here is you can segment down by party. So you can say, hey, here's our messaging to Democrats versus here's our messaging to Republicans. Here's the messaging to the House, who has got a different legislative environment than the Senate. And thinking about how you communicate those messages differently lets you tailor it so that you can develop a message that's going to be most receptive. And you take that same approach that you did earlier, where you're focused on going through and saying, all right, I'm going to do one email a month, and then apply that down and segment it by issue or by role. And then the third, so here's a case study here that is available on the Quorum website from some of the work that we do with Uber. They do a quarterly newsletter from their team to up to folks on the Hill, and they'll send it out to communications folks, LAs, and friends of Uber, and they utilize Quorum to send it out. So it's a really great case study to be able to think about of, okay, how do you go and share that information consistently? And they get a pretty amazing and significant benefit from it that they've talked about in the case study. Third, and what I believe is the final item here, is taking up level one further. So obviously you can do communications that you send out of just the newsletter that here's what's going on in our company organization, but is to add events to your calendar. even virtual events. And so people, as you know, hunger to be able to engage with other individuals and provide an opportunity to be able to bring stakeholders together. So we've seen clients have a lot of success doing something as simple as a briefing. You've got some pretty cool people that probably work for your organization. Get the CEO on to do a Q&A with lawmakers. Go get one of your chief economists to come in and talk about a given subject. You probably have subject matter expertise on an issue that is relevant, where people want to know what's going on with crop forecasts or what's happening with the stock market if you're, say, S&P Global and have a lot of information on that. Be able to provide those forums for people to come and learn and spend time, much like you used to do an individual event on Capitol Hill where you do a briefing. Just now, I think you're going to see the registration numbers go up significantly because it's super easy that anyone can join from their desk and be able to pop in. The other place that we've seen clients have a lot of success is just simply opening convening, saying, hey, I'm doing a small roundtable for agriculture LAs. And suddenly, what do agriculture LAs want to do? They want to meet their peers, because where would they normally be meeting them? Or in the cannon or lunchroom. And so there, that is no longer available. And so then there's the opportunity of, oh, I'm going to go on a Zoom. There's 10 people, 20 people on the Zoom, gives a chance to meet them. They then look at you as a convener. They know, oh, well, Alex got the connection to all these 20 LAs. I want to be spending more time, or he can help introduce me, or wow, I should listen to him because he's probably also talking to the other 20 LAs. And I want to make sure that my boss is getting the information that everybody else is. So it's a really wonderful place to be able to put in. Ends up being super easy with Zoom. A lot of the barriers of having to budget for it go away. But also realizing that once, hopefully, we come back to a normal environment of events, as you know, Washington loves events, the opportunity to show up for cocktails, conversation, and can really help your organization be able to segment and leverage that up to the next level, where people not only know about the issues that matter, but also then are meeting your team and engaging and really progressing along that ladder of engagement. Social media is the other best practice here at the end. So is item number 2. And that is realizing that you can do all this over email. You can do great events. But as we talked about, these lawmakers are spending more and more time online. The journalists are spending a ton of time online. You have interested people that are sitting and watching what's happening in Washington, spending time online. And here's an opportunity for you to just do a level further and be able to share, hey, here's some of the conversations. So there's some great examples here. There's about 60 or so companies that have policy Twitter accounts. Fidelity Public Policy, we did a webinar with over the summer that's available if you're really interested in diving into, okay, what does it take to create a policy Twitter account? They put theirs together this year and have had a tremendous amount of success to it. Toyota Policy has also done a great job. There's a wonderful case study on the Quorum website about how they went about putting that together and how they've grown the follower base. And then IBM Policy is another example of this. It's just being able to continually highlight, because you know that the communication staffer sees that you retweeted them. They see the information. They'll likely even follow you back because they want to engage. And then suddenly here's another essentially free opportunity to be able to put messages in front of those key staff and key stakeholders that matter and amplify that you're really moving the needle and being able to show individuals across just how influential your issue is and how many people are talking about it or engaging on it on a particular time. So that is thinking about our policy communications calendar. And here's the example in the quote from Becca Steele, who put the individual policy Twitter account together at Toyota. She said political conversations are really happening on Twitter much more than any other platform in the Beltway right now. The audience they wanted to communicate was with policy influencers, policymakers, and their staff. And Twitter is the platform where those types of conversations are happening. So couldn't agree with Becca more on this. Here's the opportunity to be able to be involved, engaging there, and a great opportunity to be thinking about adding that to your 2021 plans. Okay, we've got one final set of topics here, and then we'll have time for questions. Again, any questions you have, Q&A button on the bottom left. Click it, go ahead and submit your questions. But the fourth one is really engaging early on grassroots organizing and realizing that the opportunities to bring tons of people to Washington and do fly-ins are probably not going to happen this year. But there's a lot of success that you can have in building a really strong grassroots program to help members of Congress understand the individual influence that you have as an organization and all the people that are super excited to be able to advocate out for the issues that are happening. So again, we've got 3 different levels of beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So the most basic one is that you should be going out and growing your advocacy list right now. As you've seen, interest in politics and Congress has been at an all-time high with the presidential election. We've had more Americans vote than I think any time since the early 1900s. people are paying attention to the political process, which is a wonderful thing for our democracy. And also it's a great opportunity for them to pay attention to your organization and your issues. And so here's the opportunity for you to really dive in and grow your advocate list. Get people to sign up to be an advocate and start thinking of really opt into your individual program. So think about one, how do you sign people up for your newsletter and for your advocacy program? Making sure the basic that when people go to your website, there's a very clear email sign up button that is easily accessible and they can go get information. Website visitors, what are you doing to convert them? Is there a page that if they're about to go away pops up and says, hey, do you still want more information? Sign up here. Organic and paid social media is another awesome way to do this. People are spending more and more time online, given their home, looking for things to do. Here's a chance for you to go and spend a little bit of money signing people up through Facebook lead ads, through Twitter, and getting them to join your individual program. Text messaging is another big one. Being able to simply say and do, if you're doing a webinar members or a big call, and say, hey, by the way, text advocacy to 383893 and we'll sign you up for our advocacy program. Another opportunity to opt people in. Events, also great. So all the virtual events that you're doing, making sure and saying, hey, by the way, when you sign up for this virtual event, we're also going to register you for our email list, our advocacy program, or click here if you want to be registered for those. And then last but not least, partnerships. Where are there opportunities where you might be able to get an organization to send out one of your advocacy campaigns? We've got COVID stimulus talks going on. You probably want to be able to be in the middle of that conversation. Get a partner organization to say, hey, send this out. We've got the individual grassroots advocacy widget. Well, through that, you then get the ability to use the list if you have that conversation with your partner, and you can be able to use that to pull in more and more people on your individual list. Having that list and building it is going to be a really key item towards success, because over the course of 2021, you can then go back and tap that list, add more people to it and ask them to take action and really be vocal and participatory, which is a really key item. So grassroots texting, this is a great example of it. So text messages have a 98% open rate compared to about a 20% rate on email, and 95% of those texts end up being opened within 5 minutes. So a really awesome opportunity. The other thing that you should be thinking about is a conversation on, okay, you have all these emails, how do you transition from email to text message? And making sure that you both have individuals' emails, because there's a time and a place for that that works really well. And then on the other side, how do you make sure that you also have the chance to be able to go and communicate by a text message so that you get those higher open rates, or can say, hey, this is a really big one. COVID release about to happen tomorrow, and we want to make sure that we get, Save Our Stages, the big campaign for relief for independent music venues, that we get in there. We're going to text everyone because this is a really key issue. So that's a great one, and a new piece that we've added to the Quorum platform this year to really think about how do we advocate in this pandemic and socially distanced era. Second big one is to teach your advocates about new officials. So with all this interest that's happening in politics, you have new members of Congress, new state legislators. Here's an opportunity to engage them, bring them in. You might not be ready to have them go do an individual campaign right now, but do a push to get them to know their member of Congress and give them some incentives to be able to do that. So at the top, you see a great example from Toyota around gamification, which is as simple as it seems. It's a little similar to, say, the Starbucks rewards program, where as you think about the Starbucks rewards program, every time you go and get a cup of coffee, you suddenly get sparkles that go and fly everywhere. Bring that into your grassroots advocacy. You've got these advocates that are doing the same thing, where instead of buying something from you, they're taking action. It's valuable. Give them a little something in return. Make them feel like, hey, you're at the top of the leaderboard. You can give individual prizes and say, hey, we can send you a t-shirt if you reach the top of it, and have that and use that as our incentive for them to go and do things like watching an individual video, learning more about a member of Congress, reaching out, doing a relationship survey that we talked about earlier of saying, hey, who do you even know that might be relevant for us? But pulling them in a really thoughtful way, and also thinking about how you're going to keep them engaged over 2021. Obviously great that we have so much focus now on what's happening in politics and people are really excited about that, but then also thinking longer term with the approach of, all right, how do you keep them engaged when it's August of next year and everyone wants to go on vacation, but you really need them to turn out to be involved in a key item. The other item here that I think is super innovative that comes from one of our clients is to go in and actually do quizzes. And so have them send them a video, make sure they've watched and read the content. If you just put a little, even 3-question quiz on the end, one, they know there's a quiz, so they're going to pay more attention rather than going and being on 2 individual sites at once. But also gives a chance to be able to them to move through the content. So they're really up to speed. They know what's happening. They know what's going on. and then you have them well prepared so that when you need them to engage those members of Congress, they go, oh yeah, I know about, Deb Haaland from New Mexico. Here's what she cares about. This is the engagement. And yes, now I'm ready to go send a message to them, because it's about breaking down that engagement barrier so that people go, oh, it's a member of Congress, I'm intimidated. Nope. It's like, I know that person. I feel like I can relate to them and I want to go reach out to them. So a really great opportunity to teach advocates about the new officials. And then last but not least is to make sure that you are ready to go to launch campaigns on issues that relate to the first 100 days. So over here on the right-hand side, you see legislative accomplishments in the first 100 days, going back to the H.W. Bush administration. The purple is the number of bills that have passed in the first 100 days, and the gold is the number of resolutions that have passed in the first 100 days. So we usually see a flurry of legislative activity at the start of a new administration as people want to get things done. A new Congress is excited to get to work. This should be an awesome opportunity for you to be able to either advance the issue that you care about, or where you might have an issue that's being advanced that you want to make sure that you're involved in, or at least have a seat at the table as it's being discussed. And so you want to make sure that you've got a very specific plan in place and the campaign's all teed up and ready to go. And even you could do a simple best practice of have multiple campaigns teed up. If you're not exactly sure what's going to come yet, because we're still waiting on control of the House or the Senate, have 2 or 3 campaigns ready to go so that when that hits the mark and the bill's introduced or the topic comes up, you're ready to go and send it. The other very fun best practice and trick here is that you can go ahead and basically delay the messages. And so you can have people go write them, but you can put a hold on them essentially. And so you can wait for the day that your team has the meeting on Capitol Hill, or where the big bill is up for a vote, and then release them all on that day or the day before that day so that people then have the chance to read them and you send them all in at once. Another way to be able to keep continuing on your strategy and to make it even stronger and more effective. All right. That brings us to the end of this presentation and all the slides that I've prepared. We've got about 20 minutes here, and I'm very excited to take your questions. So Satya has been helping me a little bit here to be able to share some of them. But again, as a reminder, bottom left, if you hit the Q&A button, there's then the opportunity to go and to be able to submit a question in it. So here we go. If we're using a policy reputation calendar to send emails, how to make sure that they stand out and actually get opened. So this is a key one and really, really thoughtful. First thing that I would say on it is make sure that you're sending it from an individual and make sure that it's personalized. A lot of the systems on Capitol Hill, which is Microsoft Outlook, have the ability to make it pretty clear where it's a distribution list. And so if you're sending an HTML email, people look at it and say, like this is probably a marketing email, the same thing that like LL Bean might have sent me, next. But if it seems like, oh, wait a minute, Alex took the time to personally reach out to me, it at least makes the mind pause and think about it. And that's a huge opportunity. You also should be really thoughtful on the how it's sent and ask any of your vendors, whether it's Quorum or others, exactly how they're sending emails, because there's a way to do it where it says, basically sent from Quorum on behalf of X. Not great, because people know very clearly, oh, sent through Quorum. But we've got a way at Quorum to authenticate. So it actually looks like Alex Wirth sent it, and you get an individual message that goes out, and there's no markings that say, oh, this was mass sent in some way or another. And that provides a really good opportunity to bring it in. The other key one here is keep it short. These individual staffers are really, really busy. We did a great webinar with Austin Carson at NVIDIA on this. And his 2 things were keep it short and also make an effort to be able to send just the relevant information so that you're being helpful to them. They're probably overwhelmed. Like there's a whole new Congress here, new members, new staff that are engaging in a massive way. And so you then want that opportunity to make sure that you're being really thoughtful about approaching that engagement with them and keeping it super relevant. So I would highly recommend the case study there with NVIDIA to make an effort to be able to reach out to those individuals. Next question is, what are teams doing differently because of an administration change? So the biggest one here is that there's a whole new series of stakeholders coming into place across the administration. And that means that your stakeholder engagement basically starts, for the most part, from zero. Maybe you remember some of the folks from the Obama administration, you worked with them, your team might have had good relationships during that time, but you have all people coming into new roles, and here's a chance to build those relationships, either from zero or build them back up. So the key piece that I would recommend is going back to that champion identification. One, a lot of them have been in the private sector, been very active on Twitter, putting out lots of information. Where are those hooks that you can engage in? But also put together a list. Who are the people that really matter to you? And then say, all right, does our team sign them out to team members? Does anyone have relationships with them? And then build on it. Do they actually know the team? Do they know your organization? And how do you then build and leverage up? So they go, not only is it knows our team, but knows our issues versus actually being supportive of your issues and willing to call and reach out. The other handy piece that has been reported is that one of the things the Biden administration is looking to do is to fill a lot of the junior level positions that don't require Senate confirmations faster. So think deputy assistant secretaries and political appointees who are going to be able to help coordinate some of the policy, but are not going to be tied up in big Senate confirmation fights. And so there then is an opportunity for you to be immediately reaching out to those folks, oftentimes who are earlier in their career, earlier involved, and be able to start educating them. Make sure they know who you are, know who your cell phone is, and be able to reach out and actually truly be a resource in these times. So that's probably the biggest best practice that we would encourage and see. And then also just making clear that you've got a plan to go in and brief the new administration on whatever is the individual issue that's really important to you, and you've got that pathway to be able to go do it. Next question that we have is, what should we do with Senate relationships while we wait for party control to be determined in January? So this is an excellent one. It is going to come down to the wire because you've got the runoff happening in early January, and then the Georgia runoff, and then it might take a number of weeks if the vote ends up being very, very close to have an individual winner. And so both Senator Schumer and Senator McConnell are going to be waiting a little in the limbo of who controls the Senate and waiting for that direction, and it might take a bit. I think the biggest recommendation that I would have is, obviously who controls makes a big influence, but you're probably in this to play a long-term game. Your hope is probably to keep advocating your issues in Washington 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years. Use the time to be developing relationships out with both the ranking member on the committee as well as the majority member, realizing that both of those could switch. But also spend time, if you've dialed it in on your issue and on the relevant committee, spend time getting to know all the members, because you might be surprised of who might be the junior member on the committee that's actually going to champion your bill and get it through that individual committee. And so really what I would encourage is, don't use it as a pause of saying, oh no, we can't engage because we don't know who's going to control the Senate, but rather look at the other side of that so that you can really be thoughtful around engaging with a wide variety of different stakeholders and doing that in a manner that is advancing your interests. We've got tons of questions coming in. I love it here as I'm looking down at them. Again, bottom left, you can put in any Q&A. And one of these is, great idea, but can you talk a bit about how we can use Quorum to implement these? So obviously happy to do that. We made an effort to try and make this not seem like a sales pitch, but rather give you a lot of best practices you can implement with Quorum. Obviously we can help in many ways. So just going back to the first piece of it, one, Quorum's got a way to search across all the bios out there. So we can go in and take an individual issue and see if a member of Congress or a state legislator has in their bio what's happening. Quorum also has the most comprehensive database of social media: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Huge opportunities to go search across all of that and identify where are those policymakers that are going to be interested. And the news, we've been pulling together all the news so you can put in your given subject and be able to very quickly find out the information of, hey, here are the news stories that are relevant. When it comes to stakeholder mapping, one of the challenges that we've seen is people often do it in Excel. Great, works fine to get started, but then the problem is, oh, who has the Excel file? Who last updated it? Wait, it's open on your computer and open on my computer. It starts to break down. And so we've built out a whole sheet system so that you can do your stakeholder mapping, whether by interest and influence. The chart that we showed you in the presentation actually did come from Quorum, or by tiers, or even by issue or by committee. And the best part of it is that any of the information that's out there that is publicly available, we can auto-populate onto the spreadsheet. So if you want to know how many times the legislators talked about an issue, we can put it right in. If you want to know exactly who the members of the House Cement Caucus are, we can put it right into the spreadsheet, do it all automatically through the Quorum system. And so it really helps with that individual stakeholder mapping. The other piece of it that is coming to the site very soon, we'll give you folks on the webinar an early preview, is stances. And so being able to go in and say, hey, here's somebody who knows our team, here's who knows who our issue, here's who's willing to take action on our behalf, to help make that process of stakeholder mapping and moving people through an influence ladder even easier. When it comes to policy communication, really two big ways we help. One, we've got the database of all the staff contact information, and then also as well have the outbox tool to send out those personalized emails. And we've made a huge effort to really invest in our technology so it is personal as possible when you're communicating with the Hill, and you can send out those individual emails in a way that makes people think that you took the time to send them one by one and be able to share it. And then when it comes to a policy Twitter account, obviously we don't post individual things on Twitter through the Quorum platform, but we help you find a lot of content you can engage with. So the idea is, if you have the majority leader in the Senate in Alaska come and tweet an article is in favor, you want to go retweet that because maybe your members of Congress from Alaska are going to say, oh, wow, they're engaging with so-and-so. Here's an opportunity to be able to highlight, hey, this organization's everywhere, talking with legislators, doing Zoom events, doing webinars, and that's really a wonderful opportunity to engage. We also have got an event management functionality in Quorum so that if you're looking to do event registrations, you can do that through the Quorum platform. And then finally, when it comes to grassroots advocacy, we realize that's really, the fourth part of all of this is you can do a lot of advocacy work yourself and you show the best tools, but sometimes you need a little bit of help from all of your members, from your employees, from individual donors. And so that's then the opportunity to get them to write their member of Congress. And Quorum has a suite of software tools to be able to do the text message functionality, be able to write your member, tweet your member, call your member, and be able to really invest there. And then also the other fun ones is we did build out gamification. So that's all natively built, and it makes it really easy to set up your own gamification program. And then thinking too about, okay, how do you then take that to the next level and do stakeholder scoring and stakeholder surveys of asking, hey, who do you know? Who might you be willing to reach out to? Do you have any relationship with these members of Congress? And really what you hear, the goal of all of this is to think about how do we help both our current clients as well as potential clients who are on this conversation really take your advocacy strategy up to the next level. And like so many different industries, the way that happens is through technology. I think one of the kind of cool elements of the Biden administration is their transition teams at each agency have a point person for technology, because what they've realized in government is that you need really good technology if you're going to be able to get any of your key policy issues done. I think they obviously learned that from some of the challenges with healthcare.gov when that was rolled out during the Obama administration. And so I would encourage you to think about that approach as it comes to your legislative strategy for 2021. What are you going to be doing to make sure that you've got all these grand plans, and how can you use technology to help you to make that experience even easier and really leverage you to be able to have a really productive and exciting 2021. So that covers it of all the questions that we have. My email is just alex@quorum.us. Happy to be helpful to anyone who's on this webinar. Happy to dive deeper into any one of these issues. Our CSMs, customer success managers at Quorum, for our current Quorum clients on the webinar, know a ton about all these specific issues. But also as well, our account executive team is well versed if you are not a Quorum client and want to think a bit about what can we be doing to help you. And I'd certainly be happy to engage in any of those conversations with you as well. So again, super simple, alex@quorum.us. And with that, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, spending the time to this presentation.